2 years ago, Emily's life fell apart in the worst way possible. She came home early from work one rainy evening, expecting to surprise her husband Mark with his favorite dinner. Instead, she found his phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. Curiosity turned to horror as she scrolled through messages from his secretary, Lisa, explicit photos, late-night plans, and cruel words laughing at Emily behind her back, calling her the dull wife who doesn't understand ambition. Mark didn't even try to deny it when she confronted him. He stood there cold and defiant, blaming her for working too hard, for wanting a family too soon, for not being fun anymore. He packed a bag that same night and left, telling her she'd never find someone better. The divorce that followed was brutal. He fought every penny of support, spread lies among their friends that she was unstable, and made sure everyone in his company, Technova, knew he'd upgraded to Lisa. Emily hit rock bottom. She quit her job to escape the whispers, moved into a cramped apartment, and spent months replaying every moment of their 10-year relationship, wondering how she missed the signs. Nights were the hardest, curled up alone, crying over old photos, convinced she'd never trust anyone again. Then, on one of those gray mornings when hope felt impossible, she walked into a quiet coffee shop and accidentally spilled her latte across a stranger's table. The man didn't get angry. He simply grabbed napkins, smiled, and said, "Rough day? Happens to the best of us." His name was Alex. He had kind eyes, a warm voice, and no idea that the woman in front of him was carrying a broken heart. They talked for an hour that day. He asked about the book peeking out of her bag, really listened when she answered, and made her laugh for the first time in months. Over the next weeks, he kept showing up, not with grand gestures, but with quiet consistency. A text to check if she'd eaten, a walk in the park when she felt overwhelmed. Home-cooked dinners where he shared his own past pain, admitting he'd once been engaged to someone who only wanted his success, not his heart. Alex never rushed her. When Emily confessed her fear of being hurt again, he took her hands and promised he'd earn her trust one day at a time. Slowly, the walls she'd built started to crack. She began to smile again, to dream again. With his gentle encouragement, she picked up freelance marketing work and rediscovered her confidence. But a year later, on a quiet beach at sunset, Alex got down on one knee and asked her to spend her life with him. No flashy ring, no audience, just honesty and love. Emily said yes, tears streaming down her face, feeling safe in a way she never had with Mark. They married quietly, keeping things private. Alex had his reasons. He was wealthy, incredibly so, but he hated the spotlight. He'd built Technova from nothing, a tech empire worth billions. Yet most employees had never even seen him in person. He preferred working behind the scenes, letting his team take the credit while he focused on innovation and giving back. Emily never told her old circle about Alex's identity. She wanted to rebuild her life on her own terms, not ride someone else's success. But as Christmas approached, everything was about to change. Technova's annual holiday party was the event of the year, lavish, exclusive, and impossible to skip if you still had ties to the company. Emily hadn't planned to go, but Alex surprised her. "I think it's time," he said softly one evening, brushing her hair from her face. "You've healed enough to face the past, and I want to stand beside you when you do." Her stomach twisted at the thought of seeing Mark again. He'd been promoted since the divorce, strutting around with Lisa, posting photos of their extravagant life. Rumors said he loved telling anyone who'd listen how he'd escaped a dead-end marriage. But Alex's steady gaze gave her courage. She nodded. They would go together. The night of the party arrived. Emily stood in front of a mirror in a stunning red gown that hugged her figure perfectly, her hair swept up, confidence radiating from her in a way it hadn't in years. Alex, handsome in a tailored black suit, kissed her forehead and whispered, "You are breathtaking. Tonight, the world sees the real you, the woman I fell in love with." As their car pulled up to the grand ballroom, Emily took a deep breath. She had no idea what was coming, but she felt ready. Mark was inside, probably already sipping champagne, waiting for a chance to gloat if she dared show her face. He had no clue who was walking in with her. He had no idea that the man who owned everything he boasted about was now the one holding her hand. The doors were about to open, and when they did, nothing would ever be the same. The heavy ballroom doors swung open, and Emily stepped inside on Alex's arm. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Holiday music filled the air, and hundreds of elegantly dressed guests turned to look. She felt every eye on her, but for the first time in years, she didn't shrink. She stood taller. Across the room, Mark spotted her almost immediately. He was holding a champagne flute, Lisa clinging to his arm in a tight gold dress, laughing loudly at something he said. His smirk appeared instantly. He leaned toward Lisa, whispered something, and started walking straight toward Emily. Here it comes, she thought. The moment she dreaded. Mark stopped in front of them, looking Emily up and down with fake pity. Well, Emily, didn't think you'd have the courage to show up. His voice was loud enough for nearby groups to hear. Still looks like you're doing okay, I guess. Who's this? You're +1 from the bargain bin. Lisa snickered, flipping her hair. A few colleagues shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. That Emily's heart pounded, old wounds threatening to reopen. But Alex's hand tightened gently around hers, grounding her. She lifted her chin and smiled calmly. Mark, Lisa, nice to see you too. Mark wasn't done. He took a step closer, voice dripping with arrogance. Heard things have been rough for you. Still single, right? Can't say I'm surprised. Some people just aren't built for the big leagues. He glanced at Alex dismissively. No offense, man. Hope you're ready for high maintenance. The crowd around them grew quiet. Emily felt heat rise in her cheeks, not from shame, but from years of bottled-up pain. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the CEO took the stage at the front of the room. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, before we continue the festivities, I'd like to introduce someone very special, someone most of you have never met in person. The visionary who founded this company 20 years ago and turned it into the empire it is today. Please welcome our owner, Mr. Alex Thornton. Spotlights swept across the room and landed directly on Alex. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Phones dropped. Conversation stopped dead. Mark's face went white. His champagne glass trembled in his hand. Alex gave a small, humble wave and smiled at the room. Then he turned to Emily, kissed her hand, and led her toward the stage as applause thundered. Mark stood frozen, mouth open, staring as the man he'd just insulted walked away with his ex-wife. The woman he'd cheated on, lied about, and humiliated for years and on stage. Alex kept his speech short and gracious, thanking the team for their hard work. But when it ended, he returned to Emily, wrapped an arm around her waist, and faced Mark across the room. His expression was calm, but his eyes held steel. Later, away from the crowd, Alex asked Mark to step into a private meeting room. Emily waited outside, heart racing. When the door opened again, Mark emerged pale and shaking. That Alex's voice was quiet but firm. Your performance reviews, the expense reports, the complaints about your behavior, it all adds up. You're done here. Clear your desk by morning. Mark tried to speak, stammered apologies, even dropped Lisa's name as if it might help. But Alex simply walked past him and took Emily's hand. Lisa, overhearing from nearby, panicked. She started yelling at Mark in front of everyone, blaming him for ruining their future. Within minutes, she stormed out alone, leaving him standing there humiliated. Emily finally faced Mark one last time. Her voice didn't shake. You told me I'd never find better. You were wrong. I found someone who loves me, respects me, and never made me beg for scraps of attention. Enjoy the life you chose. She turned and walked away, Alex beside her. They danced under the mistletoe that night, her head on his chest, his arms holding her close. He whispered, I'm so proud of you. You didn't need revenge. You just needed to be free. Months later, Emily accepted a senior creative role at Technova, earning it on her own talent. Friends who once believed Mark's lies reached out with apologies. And one beautiful spring morning, she told Alex she was pregnant. He cried, actually cried, holding her like she was the most precious thing in his world. Mark? He faded into obscurity, jumping from job to job, his reputation following him like a shadow. Emily had lost everything once. But from those ashes, she built something unbreakable. Real love, real strength, and a future brighter than any empire. The ballroom doors parted like curtains on the final act, and Emily stepped through on Alex's arm, the red silk of her gown catching every shard of light from the chandeliers. Heads turned. Whispers followed. She felt the weight of every stare, but instead of shrinking, she let it fuel her. Tonight, she wasn't the woman who had once begged for scraps of affection. Tonight, she was whole. Mark saw her instantly. He was leaning against the bar, champagne in hand, Lisa draped over him like an expensive accessory. His eyes narrowed, then lit up with cruel amusement. He murmured something to Lisa, set his glass down, and started walking straight toward them, shoulders squared, ready to deliver the performance he'd probably rehearsed in his head for months. He stopped just close enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Emily," he drawled, dragging her name like it tasted bad. "Didn't think you'd show your face here. Brave. Or desperate." His gaze flicked to Alex with open contempt. "Brought a date, I see. Hope he knows what he's signing up for." Lisa laughed too loudly, tossing her hair. A circle of colleagues shifted awkwardly, pretending to look anywhere else, but listening to every word. Emily's pulse hammered in her ears. Memories flooded back. Nights spent crying alone, the divorce papers, the way Mark had smiled in court like he'd already won. She felt Alex's fingers tighten around hers, steady and warm, reminding her she wasn't alone anymore. She drew a slow breath and met Mark's eyes. "I'm not here for you, Mark. I'm here because I was invited. Same as you." That only made him lean in closer, voice dropping to a venomous hiss disguised as concern. "Come on, don't kid yourself. Everyone knows how rough it's been. Still living in that tiny apartment? Still single until this guy?" He jerked his chin toward Alex. "No offense, buddy, but you look like you can barely afford the ticket in." A few nervous chuckles escaped from the onlookers. Emily's cheeks burned, but before she could fire back, the music faded and the CEO climbed the stage at the far end of the room. The crowd turned toward him, grateful for the interruption. "Thank you all for being here tonight," the CEO began, smiling wide. "This company wouldn't be what it is without the vision of one man, a man most of you have never met in person. The founder who started Technova in a garage 20 years ago and built it into the empire we celebrate tonight. Please join me in welcoming our owner, Mr. Alex Thornton." The spotlights swept across the room and locked onto Alex. Silence crashed over the ballroom like a wave. Every face turned. Jaws dropped. Someone's phone slipped from their hand and clattered to the floor, but Mark's smirk vanished. The color drained from his face so fast it looked painful. His champagne glass trembled, sloshing liquid over his fingers. Alex gave a small, modest wave to the thunderous applause, then turned to Emily, lifted her hand to his lips, and guided her through the parting crowd toward the stage. Cameras flashed. People clapped harder down on stage. Alex kept his speech brief and gracious, thanking the employees, praising innovation, promising an even brighter future. When he finished, he stepped down, wrapped an arm around Emily's waist, and faced the room again. His eyes found Mark across the sea of stunned faces, and held. Later, when the music resumed and the shock began to settle into excited chatter, Alex quietly asked Mark to join him in a side room. Emily waited outside, heart racing. 10 minutes later, the door opened. Mark stumbled out, pale and sweating, eyes wide with panic. Alex emerged calm as ever. "It's done," he told her softly. "His access badge is deactivated. Security will escort him out tomorrow morning." Inside the room, Alex had laid it all out. Years of padded expense reports, complaint from staff about Mark's behavior, evidence of him using company time for personal affairs. The affair with Lisa had been the least of it. Mark had begged, blamed stress, blamed Lisa, even tried to shift responsibility to Emily. Alex hadn't raised his voice once. He simply ended it. Back in the ballroom, Lisa overheard someone whispering about the firing. Her face twisted. She marched up to Mark in front of everyone and started screaming about the vacations they'd lose, the apartment lease in his name, the lifestyle she deserved. Within minutes, she grabbed her clutch and stormed out alone, heels clicking like gunshots. Mark stood abandoned in the middle of the floor, the man who once bragged about his perfect life, now exposed as the fraud he was. Emily walked up to him one last time. "No jailing, no tears, just quiet truth. You told me no one would ever want me after you. You told me I wasn't enough. Look at me now." Her voice was steady, strong. I'm loved by a man who sees me, who fights for me, who never made me feel small. Everything you threw away, someone else treasured. That's the difference between you and him. She turned and walked back to Alex. He met her halfway, pulled her into his arms, and they danced under strings of twinkling lights and mistletoe. His hand rested low on her back, protective and sure. He whispered against her hair, "You were magnificent tonight. I'm so proud of the woman you are." In the months that followed, life bloomed brighter than Emily ever imagined. She accepted a senior creative director position at Technova, earned through her own portfolio, not favoritism. Old friends who had believed Mark's lies sent apologies and coffee invitations. Mark vanished from their circles, bouncing between low-paying jobs, his reputation following him like smoke point one spring morning. Emily stood in their sunlit kitchen, took Alex's hand, and placed it on her stomach. "We're having a baby," she said, voice catching. He dropped to his knees right there, pressed his forehead to her belly, and cried. Quiet, overwhelmed tears of joy. He held her like she was his entire world, because she was, from the ashes of betrayal rose something unbreakable. Trust rebuilt, love chosen daily, a family about to begin. Emily had lost everything once. Now, she had everything that mattered. And that, dear viewers, is the moment justice didn't just knock. It walked in wearing a red dress and left hand in hand with the man who owned the empire.